Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Programmatically Correct show. I am your host, Ellen Parker, and I am still getting set up, and everyone else is probably still logging in. So, thank you for making the time today. And this time, I made sure to click on live because on Monday, I gave you a fire presentation on the cookie crumble. And nothing happened. So I'm currently just going to log into Clubhouse really quick for my folks that would rather be on Clubhouse. And then we're going to get into part two. Part two of the cookie crumble. There it is. Let's go. Maybe. I think I did it correctly. All right, we are live everywhere. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining on Instagram Live. Thank you for joining on YouTube, and I promise I will work on my lighting in the next couple shows. But thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ellen Parker. I am the host of the Programmatic Digest podcast, and I'm also the Chief Programmatic Sensei of Ellen Parker Consulting. So, a little bit about myself before we get into today's conversation. I offer customizable. Sorry, let me. I gotta figure things out. I offer customizable training in programmatic media for individuals and teams. So it can be a 6 month program or it can be on a one-on-one coaching. And if you're just trying to look for a community, I also have that for you. It's called the Programmatic Media. So for more information, head over to my website, ellenparker.com. You'll find opportunities to learn more about the one-on-one coaching, the 6 month program, training customizable to your skill set, and of course, if you're just looking for a community of programmatic ninjas and add-ups who just like talk shop, then I have the Programmatic Meetup. So today we are going to talk about part two of Monday's conversation. So if you're not here on Monday, that's absolutely okay. I wrote an article about our conversation. It's on my LinkedIn profile, and then I'll make sure to add the link in our follow-ups on all social media. But we talked about the cookie crumble, right? And Alison Schiff's words from the Ad Exchanger, I think she's the one who called it the cookie crumble, is Google's announcement of ridding third-party cookies, which is affecting the advertising industry because we overdid it. We overused third-party cookie data in our targeting. So in today's conversation, we're going to talk about potential solution. So just as a quick recap to Monday's conversation, and again, in Clubhouse fashion, welcome, hop in. Come join us. We are talking about cookie deprecation, Google's announcement that was made. When did it made it? In 2020 to delay until 2023. So we have the next 12 to 18 months to figure out stuff. But in the meantime, here are a few solutions. On Monday, we talked about what happened, where it came from, what's going on. On Monday, we covered a few things in terms of what was a cookie, which is a code created by your browser, your devices, to help capture the user specification and to user online behavior. I gave the example of Amazon. When you log into your Amazon app, you can first of all, when you log into your Amazon app, you can start scrolling down and then you'll see the option of, for instance, like, get back into it or see similar items, right? Because they tracked and captured your behavior. They captured your different interests, and then now they're sending recommendation based on your previous searches, right? So the cookie is what allowed publishers, domain, websites. I know the retail space does it really well. Like a Fashion Nova, will harass you in emails with coupons or with similar items, right? Most of the retailers does it, but it's not just Fashion Nova. So that's where it first originated. The fact that the publisher, those browsers, those devices were just trying to provide or enhance consumer um, like user experience on their website, right? I don't like to go back to scratch. Like I love when I just hop back in my Amazon app and then continue shopping or continue looking into things. Now, fast forward now, Google announced that they're ridding of that ability to track a user on their behavior. Because again, we don't have access to your personal information. We don't know your names. We don't know it's Ellen Parker. We only know things like female between 25 and 35, highly likely to be over 30 but below 35s. So all of that we discussed on Monday. So I encourage you to get back into Monday's conversation and really and to really understand some of the origins and how we did things. But now let's get into today's conversation, which is going to talk about the different solution. Let me just say this, that it's September 2021 and there's a lot of work to do. We're still trying to figure out things. But unlike the rest of the industry, I am 175% optimistic in terms of the solution that we may have for targeting capabilities or behavioral targeting capabilities. So I am super optimistic. So that's not a sentiment that's always shared in our industry. And again, that's because we've overused third-party cookie data with targeting for targeting capabilities. Like that's the whole programmatic media spiel, targeting the right person at the right time with the right message at the right cost, right? That's what we say, is because we've utilized so much of third-party data to do that based on those browsers cookies, based on those devices cookies, based on all of those data providers and data partners that were able to map our users. Again, I don't know your name. I just know your your specification in terms of your online behavior. So I did a lot of research, and I also want to give a shout out to the IAB because they did have a 4-hour webinar summit yesterday talking about identity solutions. And I would encourage you all to follow the IAB. They are pretty great in terms of like sharing and educating the industry, which is something we need to do in our industry. You need to stay educated in what's going on. The IAB does it really well. Shameless plug, my podcast does it really well. I invite fellow people in our industry to assess and discuss like headlines. Another podcast actually that does it really well is the Ad Exchanger podcast. You have Clean IO podcast. I mean, you have a few of them out there with Kathleen Booth, I believe. So back to the conversation. So back to the solution. So I did a lot of research. There's a lot going on. Again, it's September 2021. So a month from now, we might have an updated version of this. But in the meantime, I was able to categorize 3 type of solution out there. So there is the capability to now prioritize using your first party data. That's one. The second one is the Unified ID 2.0. And then the third one we'll talk about is anything outside of like the audience specific targeting, which involves other tactics like contextual targeting. So we'll talk specifically about the Zeus technology here. That's the one that I could come up in my that I could find in my research. So let's talk about first party data. So as a reminder, third-party data is based on third-party cookies. That is a code implemented on the browser devices and track the user's behavior. Fast forward in the advertising industry, the way you've used it is the fact that data partners, technology, advertising technology used it to map the different users so that we could use those audience profile that they mapped. I refer to cookie mapping or the cookie table in the Trade Desk definition of things. That's how they defined it. So now first party data is the data that is owned by you. You're the brand. Publishers have first party data. An example of publisher is really simple. It might be a website, a domain, a network of domain, or a network of website. Let me give you the example of the Washington Post, who owns Zeus Technology, where we'll talk about in a few minutes on the contextual side. But the Washington Post is a great, actually, example in terms of a publisher and a network of publishers, because they own a network of other domain and other sites. So they own that data. So what I mean by that is that whoever logged into the Washington Post, as soon as you hit their site, I think it's like 3 seconds or more, then they don't capture your identity, but they capture you as their users. So they kind of develop their own I'm not gonna say identity, but they develop their own tracking mechanism that mimics maybe a cookie, but is not owned by the browser. It's owned by the actual publisher. So we go into talking about that first party data. So that website data, that brand's data, like Walmart data, Target has their first party data. So if you're a brand, that's what we say by first party data. Now, the second, so first party data is not really the solution here. I wanted to highlight that is because we have to prioritize using our own data, which is first party data, and create strategy into our advertising or our paid media. So it's not so much being a solution, it's the fact that it's something that we need to start paying attention to and prioritize utilizing our first party data into different type of strategy. Like, with your first party data, the data that you own, again, as a publisher, as a brand, as a site, as a device, as an app, that data could be utilized in different ways. You can make predictive modeling, you can make lookalike modeling, but I'm getting too much into details there. So again, first party data is not so much like, oh, it's a solution to third party cookies going away. It's more like, this has always existed. We need to prioritize using that first party data as much as we've had using third party data. So here's a legit solution is in case of you're thinking like, oh, dang, I need to prioritize my first party data. Where do I start? Where you find a data provider that's able to help you, model and capture that strategy based on your data, on your first party data. Some of the data providers I talked to in the first and on Monday and now is LiveRamp. LiveRamp actually has an identity graph solution that that allows you to use your data and to use that customer data without revealing the person's personal information. So that is the first step to do. You have first party data, you have a lot of data from your website, from your apps, from whatever, and you don't know how to start. Start by partnering with a data provider that's able to use your data. Now, if you want to find out more about LiveRamp, I mean, you can find them on liveramp.com. But here's why I wanted to highlight LiveRamp specifically, amongst others, is because LiveRamp is actually it has created something that I think they call it the identity link, like IDL. And the IDL is just like hash people-based identifier. So it identifies individuals across devices and environments without revealing who they are. So I'm going to explain exactly how they do it. So that's going to sound very technical, but bear with me. And the reason why I want you to understand is because the whole source of it all is privacy concern. The consumer was worried about their information being misused, even though it's different from data breach. This is approximately why we're having this conversation today. Privacy concerns. So think about that. So LiveRamp is an identity graph solution, okay, that uses the LiveRamp IDL I just mentioned, which is a hashed people-based identifier, and they identify individuals across devices and environment within that. So when we say people-based identifier, it's mainly like an email address. It contains Yes, it's an email address that they use, but they script it, they encrypt heavily. It's heavily encrypted so that like bad actors, malwares cannot, malicious actors per se, cannot have access to your exact information. Okay, so it's email based. They have their own security, and again, it's maybe a lack of terms here, but they have their own security that helps us hash that email address. So it'll probably be a long code. It won't even have an at email. It'll be like a really long code. um Sidebar, this is why crypto is so popular now, and crypto is probably the future because it's all hashed. But anyway, going back into first party data. So that's what the IDL is: people based identifier based on like an email. The reason why I wanted to highlight that is because we might be moving into a world where you cannot access anything unless you log into something. Okay, we're already doing it. You're logging to your emails. If you're using Gmail, that automatically logs in into all of your Google Suite um, group, not group, but what is it called, like suite. Like you'll be able to access your drive. You'll be able to even like have the ability to log into Facebook while using your Gmail account. So if you notice, like you've probably noticed in the last maybe 3 years, that there's a lot of things that are asking you to log via an email before accessing anything, even if it's free content. Let me just say this: this is probably not going. This is going to continue happening as we move into this cookieless world on the advertising side. So more people will have the ability to more not advertisers, but people will have the ability to log into something using their email address. Like the emails are probably going to be like a digital passport at this point. So now, how, as advertisers, as those data providers, how do we make sure that we protect the consumers' information? Well, in the case of LiveRamp, they hash it. They call it a hash email address, and hash email address is literally just like the email address is like scripted. Like you can't even tell it's an email address. So they do that with all the data that they have access to, all of the information that they have access to, in order to try to protect the user's information. Now, that's just one. Right in the same alley here, let's go ahead and talk about Unified ID 2.0, which is also known as UID 2.0. UID 2.0 is like an upgraded version of the cookies, but it preserves the essential value exchange that could be relevant enough for advertising purposes while improving consumer control. Again, this whole conversation would have never happened if it wasn't for privacy concern from a user perspective. Even if advertising does not use your personal information unless it's given to us, like a CRM data that's given to us, like a list of emails is given to us for advertising purposes by the brand, and the brand has the permission from their own consumers. Like, unless we're given that, we cannot target you specifically. So that's really important to note here. So the UID, Unified ID, uses consumers. I think they call it anonymized. Let me see. Yeah, anonymized email addresses, which is gathered from a user logging into a website or an app or mobile or your connected TV. Okay, for us cord cutters out there, we don't have cable. We have Roku's, we have Samsung TVs, we have Vizios, we have Netflix, the YouTube TV. Like, you have to log in to access that content. Some of this content is paid, some of this content is not paid. So remember what I said, that we're moving into a world where we would only log in, we'll only access to content after we log in. Remember, I called it out. Like, it's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years because of what's happening on the Google side. So why is UID just as important as the LiveRamp IDL identity link, or just as important into the next conversation in terms of contextual with the Zeus technology? Well, again, they're trying to find a way for advertising purposes, to still be relevant in how we target consumers without with the respect of their privacy. So the cool thing about the Unified ID 2.0 is because a lot of the industry leaders and partners and vendors have signed on to it. They've co-signed to this strategy and to this technology. Some of those advertising technologies, some of those ad tech include like Index Exchange, Magnite, PubMatic, OpenX, SpotX, I mean, Criteo, LiveRamp, News Store, you name it. There's a bunch of the big ad tech, including Washington Post and the Zeus technology. There's a lot of ad tech that have co-signed to Unified 2.0. Why is that an important point to make? Because third-party cookies and third-party data give us access to a lot of data. Okay, so with the browser taking away that access or the ability to track that the user's behaviors, there's a huge issue, or like there's a concern that scale might be reduced. Like we might not have a lot of like we won't be able to have the impressions, the millions of impressions access anymore because it's going away. So the fact that more of those main ad tech are signing on into using and co-signing into using one language, which is the UID 2.0, that is promising for some advertisers or some brands or some publishers, because it's both publishers and buyers here. That's promising for us because we might not have an intensified first party data, right? We might be a smaller brand or a localized brand, and we don't have enough first party data, even though I find it really hard to believe, but you might have the technology or capabilities to utilize your own first party data. So the fact that most of those big guys out there are going to use and speak one unified language, see what I did there? One unified language. That's promising because now we'll be able to have some type of access you working with those vendors. So I think there's even more vendors and ad tech that are using 2.0. Even LiveRamp has co-signed into using 2.0. So here's a quick refresher, and in Clubhouse fashion, I'm going to take the next minute or so to kind of reset the room and explain what we've been talking. This is the Welcome to the Programmatically Correct show. I'm Ellen Parker. I am the host of the Programmatic Digest podcast. I am the Chief Programmatic Sensei of Ellen Parker Consulting, and we offer customizable training in programmatic media, and from an individual's perspective and a team perspective. I offer a variety of training and development program on the one-on-one coaching or on a 6-month program or less, really assessing the best training plan based on your skills, on your needs, based on your scope of work, or on your availability with your team. So it's very customizable on that end, but the information and the training is still, it's not the same, but it's very much based on that. We also have launched the Programmatic Meetup, which is a community for ad ops, programmatic traders, media buyers, some data analysts to come in and hang out and live their best life and talk shop on a day-to-day. So we have a lot of things, a lot of opportunities for you to not only stay educated in this fast advancing industry, but also make sure that you have like the training, you have like access to that knowledge based on your training style and your communication style. So on Monday this week, the theme of the Programmatically Correct, which is a show helping demystify the programmatic media for digital marketers. So you're not running a programmatic media campaign at this time, or you're not working in the programmatic realm yet, but you're interested into developing that skill. This is a show to help you understand how to look at this big thing that's happening without scaring you, because we are so dramatic in our industry, okay? So without scaring you, I'm helping you demystify that headline, that top trends, and pretty much helping you understand why it's important and why you should consider maybe uh, joining the programmatic realm, or um, offering programmatic as a service, or continue educating yourself and developing that skill in terms of being a programmatic buyer, programmatic strategist, planner, you name it. It's a very lucrative field. It is very rewarding in terms of like knowledge, challenges. It is definitely an industry that is still in, maybe it's like a 10 years or less industry. So there's still a lot going on. Like the conversation we had last year is very different from the conversation we're going to have next year. Hold on, let me see what's happening. Oh, sorry guys on Instagram. I hope I didn't lose you. So we talked on Monday, we talked about third party cookies and cookie deprecation announcement from Google. We talked about the origins. There's an article out there on my LinkedIn profile for you to just refresh what happened, or you, wherever you're streaming right now, you might be able to access the video. If not, you can find it on YouTube. And today we talked about solutions. So we talked about being optimistic, unlike the rest of the industry sentiment. We talked about having solutions at hand, but it's still growing. It's September 2021. So this conversation is going to have an update in the next couple months because things are moving a lot. So some of the solution I suggested was look at your first party data. That's not the solution per se. It's not like a secret solution. It's more like you already have access to that. We have the next 2 years to figure it out. Start working with data providers and partners and vendors that can help you assess how to use your first party data. The other solution I talked about is LiveRamp Identity Link. And then we talked about Unified ID 2.0, which is just a unified language in terms of how they're going to track and capture users based on their emails. So it'll be hashed emails that I've mentioned, or anonymized user information to preserve their identity. So how does some of the things I just talked about, how does privacy factor in here, right? Because that's why we are even having this conversation, privacy concern, even though we don't have information, access to your personal information, but that's how it all started. So it's huge. One of the biggest things, or the biggest in Trade Desk word, the biggest knock on cookies is, and the primary reason they're going away is the growing concern and regulation around user privacy. So UID 2.0 aims to fix that problem as so. Anonymization. And I'm pulling it from the Trade Desk blog. So I'll have that in an article later. So everything that I'm talking right now, I'm going to recap in an article on my LinkedIn profile. And then I'll make sure to add all of the research that I pulled it from. So I pulled it from Digiday, and then from the Trade Desk, and then from LiveRamp. So you'll make sure to access that via the article. So anonymization, which means a person UID 2.0 contains zero information about who they are in the real world, where they are. Like any personal information will not be contained into the UID. Instead, the person's UID 2.0 is a string of numbers and letters, like I said, hash, like it's like literally a string of numbers and letters that cannot be reverse engineered to an email address or any other form of identification. So the system also has no central storage of the mapping of the 2.0 to emails. So there's no way for that system, or for, I mentioned, bad actors to trace it back to your email address. So that's a way to preserve your information. It also gives greater control. That's the second point, greater control for users. So the UID 2.0 allows consumers to log in and monitor and adjust how their personal data is being used. So it'll give you access as a consumer on how advertising will use that data. And again, it will be those hash and the long string of the long string of letters and and numbers. The final point is that greater transparency. When a consumer opts in, it allows publishers, it allows the advertisers to give them a more personalized experience. That's why cookies started. Remember, I gave the example of Amazon. If you log into your Amazon account and it gives you items, similar items, or finish what you started, or here's the deal of the day. And my deal of the day will be different from yours because of my search history. So I would rather see something that I'm kind of interested in versus like lumberjack stuff. Like I have no idea what that is. Like I'm not interested. I'm not in market. I'm not intending. I'm not a consumer for that brand, right? So that's what we call transparency, like that personalization and that enhanced experience for you, the user. It's going to allow those publishers to provide consumer free access to websites. So for all of you listening, let's say you're not working in advertising, you don't know why it's so important. Let me just say that the advertising industry has funded an open internet. What that means, I know I'm a little bit over time, so I'm going to pause right after that and we'll talk about Zeus technology next week. But what I mean by that is the fact that when you log into your Safari app, your Google Chrome, whoever, Internet Explorer, whenever you're accessing a website and you have like all those articles that you can log in, it's free content for you because it's been funded by advertising. So brands goes to those publishers, to those websites, and pour money into it, right? Because it's advertising purposes. And with that fund, the publisher is able to still provide content for you. It's free content. That's why we say that advertising is funding the open internet, the free internet, because of that. Okay. So if you had to take advertising all away, may not have a job, but nothing is going to be free out there. I mentioned earlier in the call, I mean not in the call, sorry, in the show, that in the next 2 to 3 years you won't be able to access nothing unless you logged into with your email. Okay, so just imagine even logging into Chrome, having to put your email address every single time, and unless you're giving that address, it's blocked, like it's blanked. Like if you are, I'm going to give the example of Digiday. If you're not one of their users, you only have access to like 1 free articles or 2 or 3. Sorry, Digiday, if I'm messing up, but it's like a select amount of free article to my availability because I'm not a user. I am, but I'm giving an example. So it's really important that we understand that we need to find a compromise as users, but also the advertising world is responsible for finding the proper way to preserve the consumer information. So that's why when we talk of transparency from an advertising perspective, that's why we talk about like now you have access to why, how, and what we're doing with your information. And the how includes the fact that nobody knows this Ellen Parker. It will be a string of long numbers and numbers and letters to preserve my email address so that no bad actors can come and steal my personal information. So I mentioned as a consumer that I would rather have personalized advertising, but that's just me. You know, a lot of people maybe don't care. So so this is it. We talked a lot. We vomited a lot of information today. The whole point of this Programmatically Correct show is to help demystify the programmatic media world, is to help really swift through some of those big advertising trends that may not be affecting you as a brand, you as a digital marketer from a day-to-day, but will eventually. So it's very important that we stay educated. It's very important that we stay trained on top of those things. So this show is just meant to do that, to help you understand. So again, it's perfect for somebody that is not currently working in programmatic. I'm a digital marketer. I'm working in social media. I'm working in paid social. I'm working in anything related to PPC, pay per click. I'm working maybe on the traditional media side, and I'm trying to get into digital. So this is the type of content you want to be able to view, not only over here but anywhere else. I'm just trying to do the research on your behalf and just translate it into something that makes sense, because we like to dramatize things in our industry, the programmatic media industry. I said what I said. So thank you so much for hopping in today. I know we went over a little bit longer. I was hoping to talk about the Zeus technology, which is also something the industry is very excited about. So I think we're going to continue the cookie crumble theme next week. We'll continue recapping what we'd said. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the Zeus technology, but not only the Zeus technology, like contextual targeting as a solution to a cookie-less world. So I'll make sure to bring in a little bit more in terms of content. For today's conversation, an article will be out shortly or before the end of today on my LinkedIn profile. And if you're thinking like, dang, I really have to go back and pause and like Google some stuff that she said, worry not. This video will be live, published on Instagram. It will be published on YouTube. It will be on Facebook. It will be on my LinkedIn profile. If you have any questions on anything, reach out to me. You can DM me on all of social media. I'm fairly active. So, and I'm always happy to help. No strings attached. Like, I just want to make sure not only like people that work really closely with us, but may not work in our direct field, are aware of the big changes happening, because sometimes we have tunnel vision and we tend to forget the essential branches of marketing, which programmatic media is one of that, right? So thank you so much for hopping in. I don't see any question yet, but if you have any question, DM me, do whatever you need to do to get to reach out to me. And if not, email me, info@heleneparker.com. And my name is Ellen Parker, and I am done speaking. So thank you for joining in, and I will talk to you all Monday, same time. All right, so we're done over here. Thank you, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We will see you soon.